I forgot 1 minute. We'll be all right. Just want to see everybody stand.
Right.
So. I'd like to, yeah. Call the meeting to order. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Rochelle, you'd like to do a roll call?
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember White. Present. Councilmember Danhon,
Present.
Council President Cox. Present. Councilmember Stubble. Present. Councilmember Josh Hahn,
Present.
Mayor Richardson.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Wait a second.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Cox. To approve the agenda as presented. Any other questions on that? Since there is none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Jehan.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay, moving on. First on the agenda is a public hearing, ordinance 2025-1, amending Title 13, Section 13-12-1, streets right of way and alley excavation permitting to include utility poles. Gonna open the public hearing at 6:02. Might have read it already, but go ahead and introduce the reading.
And Public Works Director Hopkins has that ordinance to read.
Okay,
You want to read this whole thing
you got to read the whole thing.
or just the amendments? How about we just,
Read.
no, I mean, this is ordinance 25-1, amending Title 13, Section 13-12-1, street and right of way and alley excavation permits. And so what you guys have in your Dropbox is the recommended adjustments, which are talking about pole removals. We hadn't addressed that in this ordinance previously, and so the new is in the green, where we're talking about permits shall be required for routine maintenance or repair. However, excavation of digging or disturbance of the right of way is not considered routine maintenance or repair. So this is coming from some questions as far as what's maintenance and what's new construction. So we're requiring permits with the new construction and the ordinance. And then we get into I, which is pole abandonment. And so I'll read that section to you. So pole abandonment: to an extent a person, a company, or other entity has or subsequently installs any pole in the right of way and then abandons that pole because it's no longer needed for operation of the pole's owner's primary service, the pole owner shall so notify the city in writing and remove such pole within 60 days after abandonment of the pole for its primary use. Such pole removal shall occur even if persons, companies, or other entities still have their equipment or facilities attached to the abandoned pole. It is the responsibility of those persons, companies, and other entities with any attachment to an abandoned pole to make other suitable arrangements for themselves. J, enforcement. If an owner or of an abandoned pole fails to comply within the above timeframe, the city may abate the nuisance and remove the abandoned pole at the owner's cost and expense, including attorney fees. Failure of a person, company, or other entity to timely remove an abandoned pole shall be considered a violation of this chapter. Persons, companies, or other entities violating this chapter shall be fined in accordance with the City of Lander fee schedule. Each day of the continuing violation of this chapter shall be deemed as a separate offense.
Okay. All questions from council?
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Lance, just a couple of questions in reference to the changes to this ordinance. Who typically removes abandoned poles?
So what's happening is nobody. And so if you look around at a lot of our redundant poles, the person who put the pole in, a lot of times what we're seeing is that's a electric company and they put it in for electric purposes. And so they have their overhead wires. And then when they deem a pole no longer being suitable for them to have their electricity on it, they move to a new pole, which they install right next to the old pole. And then they have contracts and agreements with other utility companies that allow them to hang their utilities on those poles. And so we don't know who's on that pole, whether it's a cable franchise or an internet franchise or whoever it may be, but they top that other pole when they don't use it. And now we have two poles right next to each other, one holding power and then the other one holding all the other utilities where the pole was deemed not to be suitable for at least power purposes or maybe not structurally sound. And so we called to try to get those poles removed to the power company and they're like, hey, we're on a different pole, it's not us. And then we can't track down all the other four entities who are on that pole at that point to try to figure out who's on it and how do we get them off of it. So this is now making the entity who installed the pole responsible for removal of that pole and then getting those other agreements or other contractors to attach to that pole that they put up and then take the other pole out of the ground.
Okay. Has this been somewhat of a problem throughout the course of the last few years or longer than that?
Longer than that.
Okay.
I mean, if you drive up and down just even Second Street, we've been trying to sort out getting infrastructure out of the ground. The other thing that's happening from the maintenance side is that we're getting poles set by the utility company saying, hey, we need a new pole. They're just coming into the right of way without a permit and setting new poles within the right of way. Sometimes that could be over a sewer line. Sometimes that's over water and sewer services, but without coordinating with the city, they're taking another spot in the right of way without permit. And we're like, hey, no, that's new construction. And they're like, no, that's maintenance. We're just, changing this out. So those things have brought this around to being like, okay, we need to sort this out. So we're not dealing with just pole after pole being reset in the right of way and clutter, but actually get set to, something you need to replace. Sure, fine, you can do that, but just do it all the way through, get it done correctly. And then having some teeth, we haven't adopted in the fee schedule what the price would be, but rather than having it being a misdemeanor penalty, have it be a fee per day after that 60 days.
Thank you for that information. So typically speaking, it's a utility company, not a homeowner.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead, Julia.
thanks. At the risk of interrupting, sorry, if somebody else is jumping in. Lance, is it purposeful for us to say in a timely manner instead of prescribing that with a certain 15 days, 30 days? Do you want to have that discretion, or would it benefit us to be more specific about how we would define timely manner?
So come again with that question. I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I should reference the ordinance. So in J, under enforcement, we ask the failure of the person or other entity to timely remove an abandoned pole shall be considered a violation. I wonder if it would benefit us to be more specific about what we mean by timely manner, like failure to remove it within 30 days after notice, or do you want to have that discretion for to say timely manner and not be more specific?
So if you look in I above, it's 60 days, and I think that's just referencing
Oh,
the
yeah.
60 days up above. But we could probably add it down below too on enforcement so that it's spelled out, because we want them to remove that pole within notification in 60 days. at that
Right.
time.
It might be worth a re-reference this in case you have somebody like me who doesn't see that reference back up and thinks timely is on reopening it to a different, has a different definition than that.
Yeah, I think we could repeat it, so we could make that adjustment.
Thanks.
We have 3 readings on it so that we can.
We can amend it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. That's all.
Yeah. Nobody else? Any, move on to public comment? Anybody from the public to speak on power poles? Since there is none, we'll move on. We'll close the public hearing at 6:10. Hearing closed. Moving on, we have another public hearing. Open the public hearing. Open. Public hearing ordinance 2025-2. And I'm gonna let you read that. Is that you, Rachel, or is that Lance again?
Lance has that one as well.
Hey, Lance.
Sure, this is ordinance 2025-2, and this is an ordinance granting to Spectrum Pacific West LLC, an indirect subsidiary of Charter Communications, Inc., and its successors, and assigns the right, permission, and authority to construct, install, maintain, and operate a cable system in the designated service area, limiting the term of said grant, prescribing the terms and conditions under which said company may operate. And so this is very long, and so that would take us a long time to get through all of this. This is after we worked with our franchise attorney, and we're ready with this specific agreement to move forward, and we have to adopt these by ordinance. And so this will be the first of many, and we have a few more behind it that are starting to come, but we're trying to get all of our franchises worked through, make sure they're consistent, make sure the fees are consistent and the language within them is consistent. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions, council? None? Move to public comment.
I do have one question,
Go
Mayor. I
ahead.
apologize. I did note, and I'm hoping it's this document, the 8 years. Is that accurate for the length of time?
It is, and so they push for 10 to 20 to 25 years a lot of times in these documents. So this is after negotiations getting down to that. But there is a clause in it for us if something's not correct that we can then notify, and then you can get back into negotiating the franchise. So at 8 years, it forces both parties to come, but there's automatic renewals in here. And I think certain durations after a period of time that you can start opening it back up if you don't like something within the franchise. I am shocked how much with franchises is state law. And so, you know, there's some flexibility that we have, but not a lot. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nobody? Okay, moving on. I'm gonna close this public hearing at 6:15. Public hearings closed. Moving on the agenda, item 5. This is communication from the floor. Please approach the microphone, state your full name for the record. This meeting and comments are electronically recorded. All comments are be limited to 3 minutes. Anybody with public comment? I guess there is.
Ready?
Are you ready? Okay.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, Lander City Council members, early on the morning of November 8th, 4:17 a.m. to be exact, Lander City Fire Department was called out to a fully engulfed structure fire. While you were snug in your beds at 25 degrees, our volunteers and multi-agency volunteers joined forces and risked their lives to answer the call. The new zoning changes that you are wanting to build 45-foot tall units, 10-foot apart with only one parking space per unit needs to be re-examined. An educated fire inspector and educated fire investigator, both of which are currently employed by the state of Wyoming, and trained firemen have all stated that this new zoning is not only dangerous to the occupants of the building, but to the first responders that are called. As you can see in the photos you have received, if there are multiple cars, not only on one side of the street, but both sides, fire rescue units would be hampered not only in arriving on the scene, but laying of hoses to the fire hydrants, which I might add are not all functioning order in the city of Lander right now. This was a one-story mobile home, not a multi-story building. When you walk out the front door after hearing the call and see a glow in the sky, you know it isn't a good situation. Since I did not arrive until after the knockdown of the flames, you can see that the smoke also is a dangerous issue for everyone in the area, and the use of air packs was necessary because of poisonous fumes. For those of you who are voting yes to continue this path for the so-called density for the affordable, now called attainable housing, The chairperson of the Planning Commission admitted in the last meeting of the Planning Commission that this is not the solution for lower prices due to the cost of materials and contractor fees. You do not have firefighter training or education for understanding the dangers of what it takes for any first responders to handle these types of situations. And you are not taking into consideration the dangers for the occupants renting these buildings. You're making decisions based off emotions, wanting to build for new incoming residents, not educated actual information. If you vote yes for this, remember in the future, if there are any issues with fire within these structures, the guilt will be on your shoulders. Choose wisely. How much is a human life really worth? And on a side note, the 1% tax barely passed, 8,474 yes, 7,888 no. In the packet of bills in this meeting, $28,670.15 went toward the remodel of City Hall for 2 new offices, and $16,571.25 was to Adura Group, Inc., which is an engineering company, toward the Poja Park entrance. The citizens of Lander want to see infrastructure and streets fixed. You're spending on wants, not needs. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Good evening. My name is Chad Castiel. I live at 524 Sweetwater. I'd like to first say thank you to the members of the City Council and Planning Commission for your efforts, specifically speaking about the rezoning. I strongly believe that governance is difficult and discerning the best way forward is inherently challenging. And it is likely that the decisions made by this body will affect us all in ways we can't anticipate. I have 2 considerations I'd like to bring to the council for consideration. When you study the zoning map, it's difficult to understand the method behind the creation of the zones. It appears that in most cases, city streets have been used as boundaries, yet this has been done in a way that appears to have no consistency. In our own particular case, living on Sweetwater, the southern side of Sweetwater consists of 1 block of R5, 1.5 blocks of R3, and 4 blocks of R2. Conversely, the northern side of the street has 5 blocks of R5, 2.5 blocks of R2, and 1 block of R3. And if you look at all the other boundaries across the city in map, in detail, and actually put some time to it, you'll see that it's inconsistent and that streets have been used as boundaries. As a 20-year Marine and a combat veteran, you don't use streets as boundaries there, and it's probably not going to provide consistency here either. I recommend that adjusting the boundaries to follow alleys or the rear of residential properties should be considered. Boundaries which allow an R5 zone property directly across the street from an R2 property should be considered as part of the initial oversight, which the Planning Commission has been asked to resolve. I would recommend moving the borders to where the houses back up to each other or the alleys if they're present, so that the houses which sit across from each other are consistent. In an effort to build public support and show good faith, I recommend that in all cases where boundaries can be adjusted to create consistency as described, that those borders be moved back in a direction which decreases overall density. I think this would go far to show good faith and perhaps garner some support. My second recommendation is that the structure height and setback be tied together. I've been told this is called bulk plane and it's been discussed, but it went from being a discussion point to no longer a discussion point, and I don't know why. If a structure is to be allowed to be built closer to property line, then it should be required to be shorter and vice versa. In the current conception of the changes, setbacks have been moved outwards while structures have been moved upwards. I think this is a more maximalist approach and in conflict with the many, many public comments at both the council and the Planning Commission meetings. If buildings are to be close, they should be low, and if they're tall, they should be separate. I think this recommendation, like the first, is reasonable, moderates the previous maximalist approach, addresses the concerns of the citizens, and still allows for an increase in flexibility for property owners to develop their property as they wish. In closing, I know it's not my role, but I would like to invite members of the City Council to attend the Planning Commission meetings so that you can listen to the public comments. There's a consistent pushback on these changes. The public is speaking consistently and clearly, and the Planning Commission is doing an admirable job of trying to both listen to the public while also following your guidance. Familiarity with the challenges the Planning Commission is facing and the comments from the public would very likely help the council members better understand the nature of the problem, recommend solutions coming from the public.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience? Public comment?
Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Owen Sweeney. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Lander Chamber of Commerce. These are comments that I made at the recent Planning Commission. I also wanted to echo the comments of the previous speaker here that the Planning Commission did an excellent job at listening to the suggestions for changes by the public. On behalf of our members and our Board of Directors, I'd like to offer these comments in support of the Planning Commission's proposed changes as amended to the city's zoning code to increase the availability of housing within city limits. By and large, we agree as a business organization with the commission's intent. As we have shared many times previously, we have many members, large employers and small, who are struggling to fill open positions, many of these well-paying professional positions. We understand that these proposals won't solve all of our housing problems, least of all with respect to affordability. But if some housing can be built that some people can afford, then we applaud efforts to do so. We would also respectfully like to provide 2 recommendations for your consideration. I also shared these with the Planning Commission. Since the intention of these proposals is to increase the availability of long-term dwellings on the local market, then we suggest that the city look into possible ways for limiting the number of short-term vacation rentals within the city limits. This is not to say that Airbnbs, VRBOs, et cetera, should have no place in our local economy. They should. Nevertheless, many towns and cities with housing shortages have come to realize that increasing the number of short-term vacation rentals works at cross purposes with their efforts to foster functional local economies. Secondly, efforts to improve safe construction are laudable, but a point can be reached at which the discretionary adoption of policies above and beyond what makes a building safe often imposes significant costs on businesses that are passed on to consumers. We want to see lower residential and commercial construction costs. We would like to have a discussion about finding ways to reduce unnecessary red tape, and we would be eager to participate in these discussions. Thank you for your time and your consideration of our comments.
Anybody else? Yeah, pull
I
it
feel
down.
so short.
Uh,
Okay. I didn't know if I was standing straight or, all right. Hi, my name is Tony Hudson. I live at 640 North Fifth. I'm speaking tonight against the changes to the zoning that will negatively affect my neighborhood. I also don't understand the zoning, so if I say anything wrong, please excuse me. In my opinion, if you're going to make these zone changes but negatively affect just a few areas, and really think you're going to provide more housing in our town, then do it everywhere. Get rid of the HMO and the covenants in our town, put it everywhere. I feel like this is a little bit of let's just put all these really tall buildings with as many people as we can, shove them into the small spaces, still charge them an astronomical amount. You might not see it, but I do. Our families in our town are struggling to find affordable housing day in and day out. Now we're going to just add more families in a smaller area, as tall as we can get it. We're going to have this negative impact in just certain areas, and let's just do it in our whole town. Tiny homes and accessory dwellings are a prime example of attainable housing, but there's very few places that's allowed, and I know. I live next to a vacant lot. This property is one that a multiple family dwelling can get built on. I don't want it next to me. Think about it. Put yourself in my shoes and in my neighbor's shoes. I could look out my back window and see a 35 to 40-foot structure, maybe look out at 15 to 12 families. Looking into my backyard and watching every move I make does not give me a warm, fuzzy feeling. Also, those families are going to have cars. I can't really talk. I have 7, but where are they going to park? So again, let's make it so that everyone in this town has to deal with it. We might see more people here, right? If it affects everyone. They might say, yeah, let's do it. I can't wait. There's also a lot of old town homes in this town. And I love to drive around and look at these whole old homes. But what would stop somebody from coming in, bulldozing down these old homes and building these 30 to 35 to 40-foot apartments? If you vote yes, we can't do anything about it. We could sell our home, right? turn our town into a bunch of people that didn't grow up here, didn't raise their family here, don't have neighbors that are their family. They're not going to care about us. I know that you probably did get letters in favor of this. I would like for you to read them to us. We want to hear the benefits that these people have. We have 7,000 people that live in our town. There's 6 of you on our here. That means you represent each about 1,600 people. I'm just a teacher, I don't know. I'd love to know the numbers, how many people are for it and how many people are against it. But you went door to door to ask us to put you in these positions. Go door to door and ask your constituents what you want. I mean, that's why you're here, right? You're making a choice that's going to affect us forever. Take a minute and think about it. That's all I'm asking you to do. Just think before you vote yes and listen to your constituents.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
In case I go over, if you finish reading, I have more to say, but I try to keep it limited. My voice is hoarse. I will try to speak up tonight and read this to you. Thank you for your time, and don't start timing me till I actually start. So thank you. I know that some of you appear to be resentful of the fact that Jackson is used as a comparison as to what Lander might look like. So let's throw that aside because I think it's realistic, but let's throw it aside. How many of you been to Billings lately? How many of you driven the streets in Billings? Billings is building beyond belief, acres and acres and acres and acres of townhomes, apartments, single homes, anything you want, you can find in Billings. Let me tell you what it's done to the prices. Absolutely nothing. They continue to go up. The homes are just being built, it goes on. So I think the premise that we're going to get lower prices, we all agree is probably not a true conclusion. Based upon what many of the council members of the Planning Commission think, one would expect those prices to come down and would be a model. But if you look around the country, that's not going to happen. Other factors, as I've said before, will have to be changed. In addition, driving the streets in Billings, my, oh my, oh my, it reinforces that we must consider parking very seriously. Everybody has 2 cars, perhaps an RV, a trailer. You can barely get down the streets, and it certainly was not safe for pedestrians or people trying to drive in 2 ways. Lander has mentioned, I think, at the council, making our streets one way. My goodness, is that a great conclusion to help Lander people feel at home? No. And what facts, long-term results do we have to arrive at our decisions for zoning? I know you've spoken to experts, but many of those experts' long-term philosophy is for density, high density and indwelling. I think we need to look around. What's the proof long-term in many years that it helps improve the quality of life in Lander? And in many ways, they have found that it makes negative impact in terms of people feeling like a community, makes negative impact on air quality, green spaces, and people tend to hide out in their houses because they feel like their neighbor's looking into their backyard. I like the suggestion about lower and not higher. If we're going that way, get on the internet and do some research. I did, looking around as to the impact for high density and building impact. It's not all positive. There's much negative that will happen to a community when we start doing this. You might also start looking at information out there as to how people will feel. I agree very strongly that we need to take in more information. I'm not sure this is what we want Lander to look like. Go to Billings, drive around, get on those streets. That's a nice moderate town. Get on those streets, see if that's what you want Lander to look like. I don't think it is. I think everybody has good intentions to try to make Lander affordable and pleasant for people. But in this case, I think we'll create more negative than positive. I ask you to vote against continuing on at this time. There's many good suggestions coming forward. I would suggest that you table it for now and look for more creative ways to incorporate the suggestions made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If there isn't, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:30 p.m. Closed. Oh, that's sorry, I was behind. That's staff update. I'm closing it anyway. So, all right. I'm going to move up here to council mayor updates. Uh, let's go with council first. Councilman Jehan, you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to speak my mind here. You know, after listening to everybody talking here and everything, I remember first getting on council and saying something and having everyone tell me that we're strictly budgetary. And I don't understand why this is even our decision in the first place. This has nothing to do with the city and the way they're spending money. I don't like listening to everybody tell us no and then everybody deciding for them. I don't think that's fair to them or us. But I did do a little research, state statute 15-1-601. You know, that there's nothing illegal about rezoning, but there is stipulations. And it says regulations may differ from one district to another, but shall be uniform for each class or kind of buildings within a district. All regulations shall be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan and design to lessen congestion on the streets, which we all know is not going to happen, because if you have 2 parking spots per place, you still have campers, 4-wheelers, toys, all the fun things we like. Secure safety from fire, panic, and other dangers. Promote health and general welfare. Provide adequate light and air. So, I mean, you're taking that away. You can drive down 8th and Washakie and see that. Let's see, prevent the overcrowding of land, avoid undue concentration of population, and facilitate adequate provisions for transportation, water, sewage, schools, parks, and other public requirements. So that's a state statute. So we're kind of going against a state statute by doing what's already being done in town. And if we're strictly budgetary, I don't understand why we have to make this decision. And if we are strictly budgetary, I know there's 36 acres down by the river that's not getting used. It'd be a real good spot to build some apartments. That's my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Julia?
Thanks, Mayor, and my apologies for not being there in person today. I needed to travel for my work to Montana. So appreciate the ability to come in here via Zoom. I wanted to do a quick appreciation to our county staff and their volunteers for a safe and secure election that happened, of course, as we all know, recently. Really excited to see that kind of community turnout to help with the election results with all the volunteers that make that run, and to the county staff who made sure that those were accessible and a safe and secure election as well. I was unable to attend the latest tree board meeting, but I did receive notes from those who attended. So I'll just let you know here that most of the folks who were appointed there attended that meeting, and they have decided to start with looking at their bylaws before they move on to the ordinances, which makes sense, get some housekeeping done in advance. And they're going to work out during those bylaws their terms. They'll stagger their terms and their officer positions. So some pretty basic work, but obviously very important. They're meeting again in a few weeks, November. I'm going to get this wrong as I always do with dates. It's November next Thursday. So what is that, 13th, 14th? November 21st, 5:30 p.m. at the Paposia Conservation District office. That's a public meeting, of course, so attend if you'd like. And they're going to be looking at a draft set of bylaws at that meeting. The Paposia Conservation District meets tomorrow, so I'll update at the next meeting. And no updates from the E&E task force at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Cox?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of updates. One, LEDA is moving forward with their strategic plan and what how that involves the city, specifically the MOU that's in existence needs to be revamped as it includes the LIFT committee, or the review of the LIFT applications, I should say, so that we will need to update the MOU, but also they're working on their strategic plan, that they're utilizing old documents that have already been in existence. There's a good group. They're meeting again tomorrow. And I think Regine is involved in a field trip as well at some point here in the near future. The State Advisory Council on Juvenile Justice will be here on Thursday and Friday. That's open to the public, and so that will be held, that meeting is held at the Best Western. It starts at 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, and then it finishes the morning, Friday morning, afternoon, depending on how efficient they are. Or I should say we, because I will be there. They're pretty efficient. Fremont County School District number 1, I've not been to their meeting. They are technically meeting tonight. They're out at Jeffrey City on a field trip, looking at their structures out there. And then I only have, I have one comment on zoning. I think that it's important to know that as it relates to zoning, that we do have 3 readings tonight as a second reading. And there is opportunity for more discussion, more information finding. And I think I appreciate some of the information that was brought to the council today for us to follow back up on. So just to be aware, specifically as it relates to my vote tonight, that that's for a second reading and not for a final reading. Also, signage at City Park. So there's a sign at City Park that does not allow camping, and it's a little confusing. Is anybody able to update me? So the one that's on our newer property, we are not allowing camping on? Is that correct?
Mayor, I'm happy
Go
to
ahead.
take this. Yeah, it's in certain areas, and so camping's allowed behind the bathrooms, but in that specific area, it's saying no camping within
Mhm.
the new park at this time, until you guys decide that you want to make that camping, or we go through the master planning process. You know, that's an addition to the park, but it's going through that. So you're seeing, yes, that in that area, it's telling you, no, don't camp there, park in the back. So.
Okay.
Yeah, that sign was to shorten the long language that you guys adopted for the signage of the new park. So when we went through that, all that language isn't going to fit onto one sign. So it was just saying, okay, what's allowed in what space at what park? So that's why that one's marked that way, but it could be confusing. Maybe we need to add something to say the camping's allowed in the back, or if that's the way that you're interpreting the entire park to be no camping, we might need to add something there.
No, it was a little bit confusing. The signs look good. They're easy to read. But it does highlight that it's City Park specific, and then in this side, there's no parking. So it doesn't really show that necessarily, but yeah, so I think it's just worth another discussion as far as what we as a council want with that area. Sure,
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think Ann and I can chat too. She made those signs, and see if there's something we can do to clear up where camping's allowed, or if we need to add
Mhm.
something to this too, to say camping's around off of 3rd Street in the back of the park, or
Yeah.
something else.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
And that's all I have.
That's all you have?
Thank you.
Councilman Hahn.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to talk about our priorities here for a couple of minutes. I think it's kind of strange that we can't fix a fire hydrant on the north side that's been broken for years, but we can spend money on an engineer for an entrance sign for the new Paposia Park. And I'm not against the sign, but I think it's kind of a timing issue. And I think we need to fix some things first. Just a moment, Mayor.
Thank you. Council, go ahead.
So I guess with the fire hydrant, I kind of have in mind which one you guys are talking about. We have a couple that have come out of service. And so we have minimum criteria of 400 feet from structure to hydrant. And so when it meets that criterion, it's when in a repair zone. It's not that the hydrant's not being repaired, it's that it's being taken out of service because we still meet our minimum criteria of separation between hydrants and structures within those areas. And as we rebuild or add infrastructure on these large projects, new hydrants will be installed. So we'd be spending the $5,000 to put it in to take it back out in a lot of these instances, or they're redundant within those areas. And so I'd be happy to walk through any of those and we can chat about them specifically if you want to meet up and we can look at the hydrants and see where the other hydrants are in proximity. But we have coverage as far as we know to working hydrants in every building.
So it's not necessarily the hydrant, it's.
It's distance to hydrant to structure. So 400 feet of coverage. So if we drew a radius around a hydrant, and if those structures are falling within that radius, it's meeting our criteria. So we have an overlapping map where we take the 400 feet, draw circles around it, and then make sure that we have coverage with working fire hydrants throughout town.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Missy.
Thank you, Mayor. Got a few things. I'll start with some thanks. Lance, starting with you and your crew, thank you for getting a hold of at least a little bit of asphalt to get some patches done. Much appreciated. And likewise, Chief, if you could pass on to the golf course board, the fence around the community center interface looks really sharp, and I hope that helps decrease some of the conflicts that happen between renters at the community center and the golf course. But it looks, I thought looks really quite nice for that. Congrats to the girls Tiger swim team for their accomplishments. That's pretty awesome. Two things here on my list remaining. So one is I would make a recommendation to you, Mayor, and the rest of the council that we suspend the LIFT program and awarding any funds to private businesses. That seems pretty clear. That's feedback we've received ahead of time and certainly with the election. And especially given that the two services that are appreciated and wanted by citizens, the commercial air service and ground transportation, both WRDA and senior centers, et cetera, are going to would benefit from having those funds distributed to them while they figure out a long-term, more permanent funding mechanism. So on that note, in terms of air service, there's a lot of concerns. I was about to say flying around, bad pun. There's a lot of concerns being expressed. I've certainly had countless conversations of late about that. Right now, we're a big assumption because of the many variables about both revenue and expenses that we have not only no control, but no influence over. But assuming things track the way they are, we have funding for about 1.5 years at our current rate of air service. So we were able to get ahead with CARES Act and some other things early on. And as the revenue guarantee requirements went up substantially more than were anticipated when the half-cent tax went into place, that's when FAST approached Lift, Move, Edge for additional funding with the desire of being able to have 2 flights a day. So SkyWest requires the funding in place before the contract year begins. So that's how the funding was achieved. The 2 flights weren't added as quickly as we had hoped for. So that's how FAST got ahead in having some surplus. And we are now drawing that down despite literally record enplanements month after month. The plane tickets are below the anticipated price point. So despite, again, record months, last month, yet again, a record month, we are having to spend down on that. So at this rate, again, a lot of assumptions in that, but should be about 1.5 years is what's being anticipated. So you can buy your tickets for holiday travel. Don't worry about it. Still, planes are still going to be flying for the time to come. And FAST is starting to look at the big picture. What is that going to look like? How will we manage to have that funding? So that's my recommendation to you. I know we do have the legal grounds that 70% is at the governing body's discretion, and I would strongly consider us to look at taking the funds that are left. They'll still be collected through the end of March and distributing them 2/3 to air service, 1/3 to WRTA and other ground transportation. That's it on my end. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Larson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to reiterate the girls swim team. Congratulations on that. They done a great job there at state. And then also the high school done a great job of doing their Veterans Day celebration or assembly there last Monday. Just done a fantastic job, and I give them all the kudos that we can. I think that's all I've got for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I jump in?
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't want to lose Councilwoman White's request there regarding suspension of the LIFT program. I
Right.
also support that. Could we add that to an agenda, a regular session before our next work session to have as a voting item and debate and vote on that proposal, please?
Did you say that again?
Sorry. I also I don't want to lose the suggestion that we take formal action on voting on the LIFT program suspension that Councilwoman White raised. Could we add that to an agenda for the next regular session? Ideally, could we add that before the next work session, have a regular session to vote on that proposal and take action on that?
Would this help if I'm gonna put it on the work session so we can
Okay.
have discussion on it and then move forward at the next regular meeting? If it's agreed upon or what you want to do. Does that sound all right? Because
Well, I worry that will extend the timeframe of uncertainty for Lyft if their processing applications are not, because that would put us out a full month. Could we discuss and debate it during a regular session and then vote then?
tonight, you mean?
No, because I think we'd have to notice it. So I was suggesting that we add a regular session
Oh,
the week of
To the work session?
during our, before our work session.
And
And
there is a regular session before the work session on that.
Before the
The end
work
of the month.
session? Yeah. Yes,
The LIFT committee, we received 3 applications for this last quarter. We are set to do pitch night next week for those 3. So if you are going to suspend it, it would be nice to know tonight so that we're not wasting the applicant's time or the LIFT committee members' time if you're not going to be funding those applications. We would like direction.
I hesitate, Mayor, to say we could decide that tonight because we haven't noticed that decision. So I hear that, Shari, that would be tough that's uncomfortable, but maybe that pitch session could be postponed until we were able to notice and then vote on that proposal.
can we just agree to move forward and suspend it tonight?
You can't vote on it because it
No, we
wasn't
can't vote on it,
advertised.
but can we get a head nod?
You
saying,
can
yeah?
give some direction, I suppose, to staff, and they can take that to them, but it's not necessarily, it hasn't been voted on.
Right. It's just direction. That's the direction you would head.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, if we can't come to any kind of head nod agreement tonight, I would suggest to the LIFT committee, do they postpone pitch night until the council has had a chance to discuss it?
Okay. I think. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I always struggle, with advance notice, and that the folks that have already submitted their application have not been given advance notice, but so I'm struggling to know what the right direction would be for the LIFT committee. I would need to think about it for a little bit before I made a educated decision.
Let's move forward.
I feel the same way. And we set this up, there's a lot of people that are happy with what's going on. There's a lot of people that are not happy, but the people voted on what we have, and to changes at the last minute, I think is pretty poor.
Okay. So direction is then tonight is to let them move forward with their applications. I have 3 of you saying you want to move forward.
Mr. Mayor, I think what I'm hearing from us is this is worthy of a conversation So it should be on an agenda, which could be at our work session.
That's what I was.
So
talking
until
about.
a decision's made, one way or the other, my suggestion is that the lift committee and all those involved should not have pitch night until after that happens.
Is that agreeable? Agreeable? Okay,
So.
I'll give you some direction.
Mr. Mayor, please.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman On.
Is, Missy, are you wanting us to hold off on the lift committee stuff to pay money to the airport and WRTA? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So over the past 3 fiscal years, obligations for the CWRA CPA totaled $1,549,079, if I said that where you can understand it, compared to the taxes allocated to the commercial air service of $2,579,217. So if you do the math, where did the other 1,030,000 and 138 go for the airport?
Can I say this is why we need to have a work session for this? No, I mean.
People
this
voted
is-
no for a reason. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I think we should
There's-
leave it the way it is and.
That's what we need, but we can have a work session discussion on all this stuff that is coming up. So if you guys are all right with that.
Yeah, I'm
we'll
good.
plan on, okay? Okay. Yeah. So we'll move on forward with the work session on that, Shari, I think. If we wanted to put them on hold, I think that would be all right too. Till we figure out what's going on. All right, moving on. Forgot what I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about the Veterans Day, how an honor that was to get up and speak to those guys and how much it means to me, what they do for our country. And listening to the prisoner of war story they give and stuff that those guys, there's a lot of prisoners of war that have never came home. They're still missing. So it was real heartfelt assembly that we went to. I did get to meet with the governor again, had a little chat with him. I don't know whether he was paying attention to me, but he heard me. So, but we'll see what happens. I says, a lot of good things happening. You got to do kudos to that high school program. I mean, it was just a great, great program. And I've been to the last 11 and they put them on great programs every year. So those kids are awesome out there. And the other note, I was going to talk about this and bringing it on the work session, our next work session. So, all right, so let's move on to staff updates. I got sidetracked. I'm sorry. Chief?
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, Lance?
Yes, Mayor and Council, just a couple of things. The tank got filled, and so there's 4 million gallons of potable water sitting in that. Hopefully, it'll be served sometime soon, and but that project has fallen behind. It was supposed to be completed by the end of the month, and I think that we're starting to run into colder weather without having certain things done. So there'll be something in the near future in front of you to decide what to do with that project. There's liquidated damages when you don't meet project schedules, on those enforcements, or there's project extensions. So I expect to see something at our next meeting talking about time extension and maybe winter shutdown, but we're not going to quite meet the deadline of getting it done in this year that we were hoping for. But the major part of that being an operation and the pumping station working would be great. And then there's small items behind that have to be done when both of those things are working. So just a quick update there. It's progressing, just not as fast as we hoped.
Well, you can't go out there today and tell if there's any leaks. So.
Yeah, exactly. Second
job.
project I'd like to talk about. I've been ahead to Casper tomorrow to talk to water development, and their recommendation was to fund us at 66%, but then to lower the overall cost of the project 800,000 below what our bid was on the project. So that puts us in a bad situation if the next bid that we do on that project is in a similar place, we'd be having to come up with a difference. And so I asked for roughly 3.6 million, which covered finishing the project and covering the bid and not even putting any sort of inflation on there because bids typically don't go down. I guess I've never seen them get cheaper by the year. And so, you know, having that, being able to cover this with our 33%, all of a sudden that's getting a lot closer to 50%. And I'm going to report to them that with all the projects, infrastructure projects that we have our enterprise money going towards, so the approval of the 9 projects of reconstruction with water, sewer, roadway throughout town, that there isn't that kind of money within our budget right now without a huge rate hike if they're not willing to cover 66% of the overall project amount. So just getting ahead now that you guys are okay with me going down there, having that conversation, trying to get 66% of the overall amount rather than their reduced amount and talking about that. So if you have any questions, feel free to, you know, ask away, or I guess, Mayor, if you want to go with me, you could come with me too if you're
Tomorrow.
busy tomorrow.
Supposed to let me know before the day of. And
I
if
am.
have appointments tomorrow. So,
But we'll go down and try this one again. If not, I'm afraid that we're gonna be looking for funding in other sources or postponing this project even further for the wells and transmission line.
okay. Go for it. All right, Regine,
I don't have anything tonight unless you have questions for me.
any questions for Regine? None? Sorry.
I have nothing else on.
Adam,
I don't have anything unless somebody has a question for me.
questions for Adam? Michelle,
There will be a regular voting meeting for the work session on November 26th. There's just a few things that need to be addressed. The process has been started for hiring temporary seasonal ice skate rink employees. So if you have anyone or know of anyone, please send them my way, or to Lori Eckhart at Parks and Rec. She's also accepting those applications. And I would also like to announce, if you haven't heard, that the city has hired Kevin Green as the new Parks and Recreation Director, and he will officially start in that position on November 19th.
yeah. Okay. Let's move on. The consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second? Motion by Councilman Cox, second by Councilman Larson to approve the consent agenda. And that's approving item A, approval October 8th, 24 regular council minute meetings. B, approval October 22nd, 24 work session meeting minutes. C, approval of October 29th, 2024 special city council meeting minutes and bills and claims. Anybody want to take an discussion on those items? If there is none, call for the question. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 Yes. I don't need to vote. Okay, moving on, old business. Action items. Approval of second reading ordinance 2024-8, repealing City of Lander Municipal Code Title 4 zoning 4-1-1 through 4-15-9 in its entirety, replacing the Title 4 planning and zoning. Have a motion and then we can have some discussion.
So moved.
And get a second.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman White. Move forward. Discussion. Councilman Hahn.
Yes, I have a few questions, but one thing that I would like to amend is the parking spots per unit. I've been looking at what our current zoning is and listening to a lot of people that are pretty darn sharp around this town, and they'd like to see 2 spaces. And I think if we can get the parked cars off the street, we're going to be better off. The other morning on that fire, and the people that, I'd like to pass this around, let these people actually see this. But, I tell you what, we had a lot of, fire apparatus on that fire. And if we would have had, parked cars, on both sides of the road, it'd been really tough. In fact, the police cars had to go up into people's yards to get down there. People don't, they don't realize, especially if you have a good working fire, how much apparatus. And we had the county boys, they mutualated, and we just had a lot of equipment out there. And I know a lot of people are thinking that you know, we can do one spot or maybe even 1.5 per unit, but you know, when I asked the planning board I asked them how many people you want to what are we looking at? How many people do we want to put in the town? And there was no answer. They haven't even looked at that. Really, it's basically, and I really think it is. I think there's a lot of emotions here that are driving this, and the affordable, attainable, and I've been listening to this for at least 8 years. The planning board basically said that this is not, whatever we do, and we've listened to a lot of people that really know about real estate. We're not going to change, and I never did believe that anyway. We're not going to change the prices. I think Lander's going to be an expensive town from here on out. But I think the safety aspect, you know, we don't know how many people we want to bring in, but we want to build things so big that we can't afford to put a little extra parking there and get the vehicles off the streets. So this does not make sense to me. I don't understand this. The other thing, so that's what I'm asking the council is to have two car spaces per unit. And then the things I wanted to talk about, and we have two facets to this situation. I was talking to Regine. You know, we have things that are outside of the zoning, but I think it's very important. Whatever happens, I think that we need to have mandatory sprinkler systems, and we really need to think about the 60-minute. I was talking to Nick about this, and he works for the state. You know, the 60-minute fire rated drywall. We need to be thinking about these, especially if we have buildings that are really close together. And another thing to think about is even with these special materials we have, if the fire breaches and we have a exposure fire where you're actually exposing the heat from one building to a next, everything will be changed. So I think we need to look at the sprinkler systems and the specialty materials, you know, for construction. But what I'm asking the council is, I would like to see, and I'm not totally against all this. Everybody thinks I'm totally fighting to kick this whole idea to the curb. I'm not trying to do that. What I would like is, I would really like to see the 2 car spaces per unit. And that's really all I'm asking for. Thank you, Mayor.
Is that, can I clarify that just a little bit, Dan? That is, we read what they put down. So you're wanting 2 spaces per unit as they come out. Okay,
Mayor,
go ahead, John.
if I can make comment there. That's the big issue that I'm seeing, you know, I've had several people approach me and says, you know, we can live with the setbacks, we can live with the heights, but, we need to have more parking. And, I would, make a motion that we modify the ordinance 2024-8 to, require at least 2 off-street parking spaces per residential unit.
And that's a motion.
That's a motion.
Okay, I got a motion to change this ordinance to 2 per unit. Can I get a second?
Second.
It's quick. Got a motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Hahn to add to this changes to the direction of 2 car spaces per unit,
Residential unit.
residential unit. Okay. Now we're gonna vote on this change,
Motion, yeah.
on this motion. So I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Jehan,
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes, yes.
motion carries. Now we're gonna move back to ordinance. Second reading, 2024-8, repealing the codes as changed. So do I need to add something?
Mayor, if I may, in your packet, the code, the planning commission would also like you to consider another amendment. The first reading highlighted the airport zoning sections were incomplete, and adopting an amendment for an airport protection zone added the language shown in your documents.
Can you
And
tell us
that,
what page that's on?
Uh,
I think I remember reading that. But
yeah, page 53. It does have to do with the airport district. It was written by engineering firm that we hired to do airport engineering, and it's consistent with Evanston's zoning, airport zone. So much so that John found that in the ordinance, we still had Evanston listed, so I will make that change also. That is section 4711, District Regulations, Airport Protection District. In your amendment document.
Yeah,
Page 51.
51. Yeah. I would move to include the amendment of 4-7-11 Airport Protection District.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Call for the question. Councilman Larson?
yes,
Yes.
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 Okay, motion carries. Gonna move on, with now, can I go back to the original motion?
You may, in our document though, and I will just read this verbatim what's in your packet. As a result of hearing public comment on the proposed zoning code changes at the October 8th public hearing and 2 subsequent planning commission meetings of October 17th and 24th, the Lander Planning Commission suggests the following amendments for second reading of ordinance 2024-8. These amendments may be considered individually or collectively. And I'll read them, but I think you'll see that they address some of the comments that you guys made tonight. The Planning Commission is suggesting amendment number 2. Maintain 10-foot wide setbacks in R1, R2, R3 residential zones. This will result in a 2-foot side setback reduction in R1 with no change for all other residential zones. So if you're looking at the fire protection distance, this would resolve that issue. Do you want to do these individually or all together?
Let's just do them all together, you think?
Yeah, they are.
They're in our packet, so go ahead.
Amendment 3, adjust the originally proposed maximum height in all zones to the following. R1, 2, and R med, 35-foot maximum height. That results in allowing the structures 5 foot higher than the current code and 5 to 10 feet lower than what was originally suggested. R3 and R5, 40-foot maximum height. This results in allowing structures to be 10 foot higher than the current code in these two zones. Amendment number 4, retain a 20-foot maximum height for accessory structures in all residential zones. That essentially reverts back to the current code with no suggested changes. If we're lowering the maximum heights for residential, it did not make sense to increase the height for accessory structures. Amendment number 5, restrict the number of accessory structures to 4 per lot for all residential zones. This is more restrictive as the current zone does not restrict the number of accessory structures in any zone.
So they need a motion on.
Yeah,
There
that
are
is up to the
changes.
council in your discussions. Again, any council member could make an amendment individually or make a motion to accept these as suggested by the Planning Commission in total.
Can I get a motion to accept those in its entirety?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Got 2 seconds. Got a motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilwoman Stubble. To approve those as read in its entirety. Any other questions, concerns about those? Councilman Hahn?
I just have a question. In the R3, it says 10 foot, the side yard, 10 foot
Mhm.
instead of 5.
Mhm.
But then it says except. And I'm trying to decipher this. Is there something like if you do a firewall, appropriate firewall, can they do the 5 foot offset or no?
Just leave it at
Okay,
10 foot.
thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just don't like the fact that they're gonna build something like kind of out of place. So like you got a bunch of single level houses and then somebody wants to come in and build a 40-foot tall structure right next to, you got a bunch of single level houses. I don't think that's fair to anybody in that neighborhood for one. I mean, especially the people who are living right behind, right next to, you know, or right in front of. Who wants to look out and see that or, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's right. Step out in your backyard and you get to check out about 30 different people in their houses, you know, and watch their families as they're watching you. Doesn't seem too cool.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Larson?
Josh, I understand what you're saying there 100%. Also, I understand the property rights, you know, that person that owns the property, if it's zoned to do whatever they, you know, if that's illegal zoning, they should be able to do it. And if the landowners there contiguous to that property want to maintain their line of sight or their vision that they're seeing, you know, they've got the opportunity to buy that piece of property and that way it is preserved.
Yeah, because normal working people can just go out and buy a chunk
Well,
of property.
I'm
and
just saying
that's-
that's the options that's available there.
So it doesn't affect you where you live, correct?
Let's don't go there.
No, I'm going there
No, we're not tonight. It's just-
because we're voting on this and this is affecting everybody, not just us.
I'm not gonna
So-
have the argument back and forth.
Well, we're not arguing. I asked a question.
Well, I think we'll move forward. I got a motion and a second to vote.
May I ask a question too in
Yes, you
reference
may.
to
Go
the,
ahead.
so International Building Code, I know that we talked about sprinklers and I know that I voted not in favor of them. So I'd like to know where we're at with that and if we need to revisit it.
Lance?
Yes, building code keeps coming out with new versions, and very soon that will be in front of you to discuss again. And we're getting when we gave the reasoning before, it was that we weren't able to enforce very well and give us a little bit of time to enforce our current codes. I think we're getting there. And so if fire sprinkling is something that you guys want to talk about in more depth and more detail, we're happy to have that discussion at a work session. Can bring back in some people to talk about it. I think Hunter is in favor in certain ways of, adopting some of that code and seeing the benefit of that. So happy as staff to start that discussion again and then talk about how we adopt codes, because the way that we've adopted codes in the past have not been appropriate either. And so there could be a matter of interpretation. So we're working Title III over in general, and then could talk about adopting new codes or updating codes, residential and commercial both.
Thank you. And then also just by way of the height of these, so currently it's 35, is that correct? So in those zones that we're talking about, somebody could build a structure currently that's 35 feet, 30 feet, and we're increasing it to 40.
No,
In R3, we're increasing it to 40.
in R3.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it
that's
says.
right.
That's correct.
And 5, yes.
Just trying to get back to my amendment.
I would like to make two clarifications if I.
Please do. Yes, thank you.
Going back to the side foot setbacks, it was just pointed out that I do have a typo in your documents. So I'm going to read Amendment 2 again. Maintain 10-foot side setbacks in R1, 2, and 3. R5 is already 5-foot side setbacks, and so we're suggesting no change in that. So if you maintain a 10-foot side setback in R1, 2, and 3, this would result in a 2-foot side setback reduction in R1 and no change for all other residential zones. So thank you to the public for pointing out a typo that I had in R5 section 475. I had listed in there that it would be a 10-foot side setback, and the planning commission was suggesting leaving that at 5 as it currently is.
Okay, so then the clarification with the maximum height is it currently is 30 feet in R3 and R5.
Correct.
And we're amending that to on number 3 to 40.
Correct.
So currently they could build a 30-foot structure.
Correct.
And then R1, R2, and R med is also 30.
Correct.
And we're recommending 5. Okay,
Correct.
30. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Hahn.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on that. On the height, I had a real problem with the height. And I talked to a lot of people, and they basically, most of the people I talked to, they said, you know what? You can build 30 feet now. 30 feet is bad, 40 feet really isn't that much worse. It's just, I mean, it's not good, but between 30 and 40 feet, it's still going to be bad for the neighbor. So anyway, that was the comments that I heard from the public.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. A few things coming through my mind. One is a lot of comments are implying like this is somehow doing unto others and being totally insular from it. And I'd point out my neighbor on one side, their house is a 5-foot setback. My neighbor on the other side, their garage is literally on the property line. In our neighborhood, there's a house that is literally a foot from the property line. I've been living there peachy keen, happy for 24 years. So I am already living these things that we're saying can be functional across a broader part of Lander. So I honestly take a bit of umbrage that I'm somehow doing unto others that I'm not experiencing myself. A second one, so last week I was doing a leadership workshop with a colleague who is a retired fire chief, professional fire chief in a number of areas, and we happen to be working with a bunch of front range up and down the whole fire spectrum, from battalion chiefs to fire chiefs and new folks. And so I was curious about their experience with side yard setbacks, and they were quite confident that what they see frequently, including in multifamily dwellings, are 3-foot setbacks are entirely the norm in many, many places and are not posing problems to their firefighting efforts for that. So I thought that was interesting to hear from over 30 firefighters, professional firefighters, to get that perspective. Lastly, and this is where things get a little tricky, we're getting caught up in what, how high a building should be, or how many lots should be, what size lot should be. But I continue to argue that really this is the question about, to what extent do the residents of Lander want Lander to be more fiscally sustainable? As we've already heard tonight from multiple places, we need more money to fix our roads. We need more money to fix our water system. We literally cannot afford our current infrastructure at our current level of density. So I realize it's an uncomfortable decision to have to make, but what we're saying is slightly increasing our density will help us be more fiscally sustainable for these projects that citizens also want. So I think a better question to ask is, are you willing to have Lander change a relatively minor degree in order to be more financially sustainable? Or do you want it to maintain as it is and understand that we will continue to struggle to appropriately repair and maintain and replace things like sewer, water, and streets? So.
Councilman Hahn.
Yeah, two parts. I see where you're coming from with wanting to grow this town, but you have half the town that has lived here all their lives, and they don't really see what you see. And so that's the first part of it. The second part is when you talk about, I can't even believe you brought that up. When you talk about big city career fire, these guys live at the fire hall. They have multiple mini stations that they can pull from. These guys can pull, they can pull assets from everywhere, including volunteer departments. And then you come to Lander, Wyoming, and we're volunteer everywhere. Thank God we have county and we can mutual aid. We do not have the assets that I mean, that it's night and day. You can't even take a piece of that, of what we have here and the assets. We've got equipment. We just don't have a lot of manpower, and you're talking a totally different thing. These people don't live at the hall. What we have to do is the guys are working, and sometimes they're 30 minutes away. We've had guys that are coming from 30, 40 miles out to come in and fight a fire. So you can't even say that, because what we have is we got volunteer guys, and everybody's shorthanded. Everybody is shorthanded. Everybody, and a lot of people don't understand, but like when I was working for the state they give you 24 hours a year to go to a fire. They won't let you leave. Some bosses won't let you go. And so depending on when you have a fire or an incident, crash, whatever it is, you never know what you're gonna get. And so to throw fire stuff from the big city and bring it to Lander, Wyoming, that is totally unfair because we don't have that. We don't as a department, we do not know how many people are coming to the fire. And every single incident we have to basically regroup and we have to do whatever we're gonna do with the manpower we have. So I want everybody in this room to know that is not correct. And I tell you what, we're lucky to, sometimes we get away with things. But all this right here in front of us is serious, and you cannot base any of this on what a career fire department can do. They have way too many assets, and I tell you what, these guys can have 40 guys in 10 minutes on a scene. We may be waiting for one truck to load and hope to God that rural can get here to help us. So that's not a good thing to bring up. We need to look at all this with the assets we have, with the fire department we have, and with hoping that the rural department is going to come and give us a hand, which they did the other day. And it was, I mean, it was big. It was big. Most people haven't been on a fire. You get on a fire, you'll understand there's a lot to it. So anyway, this right here, you need to pay attention to this stuff and look at the assets that the city of Lander can provide and the county with help and not think about things like career
Okay.
fire departments.
Moving
Thank you,
on.
Mayor.
Got
Mr. Mayor, I got
question on
something.
the floor.
So you hit on a key element and you did it again. You talk yourself into a corner. It seems like you want to boost the populace, but our infrastructure is failing. So does that make any sense to you? So if our infrastructure is failing, let's get a ton more people in here so we can really push the limits and see how far it'll go before we can actually fix it. It seems to me like it's kind of a budgeting issue and we're spending money in places we shouldn't be when we should be fixing the infrastructure. Granted, it's super expensive. I totally understand that. But it doesn't make any sense. Let's get a ton of people here and then let's fix the infrastructure off their money. What about all the people who've lived here forever and have been paying in, and the infrastructure is still crappy? You know, it doesn't make any sense. All of the decisions that are being made it doesn't make any sense. Fix what we have and then worry about, getting people to move here. People move from the cities to get away from what they have and they don't want to move here to enter into what they just left.
Okay.
I really wish we could table it. I would table it in a heartbeat, but I know nobody else would go with it. I think that we should listen to the public and I would love to put it out for a vote and see what the public actually said instead of just 6 of us sitting up here and bantering back and forth.
Okay, we're gonna move on.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I have Planning Commission member Kara Kolovich on Zoom. It looks like she had her hand raised. I didn't know if she wanted to answer any of your specific questions about these amendments or not.
Do we have questions about those specific amendments?
Kara, can you clarify that in the height discussion, we might have been using the wrong term for R5 from the change to proposed?
Yeah, sorry, Regine, that I put it in the chat there. That's why I lowered my hand. But in R5, I think it's currently actually set for 3 stories as a height restriction instead of a, 40 or 45 foot. So I just wanted to make that clarifying point.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion in a second to move forward with the suggestions and changes that the planning commission wanted. So I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Larson?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes, motion carries. All right, moving on now. We can move to approve the ordinance on second reading. This can be changed again as presented with all the changes. I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Hahn?
No.
Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on. New business. Approval first reading of ordinance 2025, amending Title 13, Section 13-12-1, street right-of-way, alley excavation and permitting of utility include utility poles. We had that discussion a little bit ago. Can I get a motion second?
So moved?
Second?
Got a motion by Councilman Cox, second by Councilman White. To approve first reading ordinance 2025-1. Do you have any discussion as we talked about? Lance is ready with his mic if you need questions answered. He's got it close. Since there's none, call for a question. Jay Han?
Yes.
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 Okay, motion carries. Moving on to item B. Approve first reading of ordinance 2025-2. We just talked about that also. Can I get a motion in a second?
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Hahn, second by Councilman Cox. For the first reading of ordinance 2025-2. Any discussion on that? Lance is still ready. Since there is none, call for the question. Councilman Jay Han?
Yes.
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 Motion carries. Going to move to item C, new business. Reappoint James Whiting to a 3-year term on the Tiger Joint Powers Board. His term is up. So I get a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second?
A motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman White. He's been on there for 3 years. His term's just limited out. He's applying for another term, which he can do. So I have no problems with him. So call for the question. Councilman Larson?
Yes.
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 Moving on to appoint Chris Salvon to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term. Can I get a motion in a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman White, second by Councilwoman Cox to appoint Chris Sullivan to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term. Anybody, he was in the packet, anybody have any problems?
I do have just a couple of comments.
Go ahead.
Just highly qualified, has an extensive amount of experience. I don't know how we got him or why he was interested, but we appreciate it. So,
Yeah, he came to one of the planning commission meetings and is
yeah,
totally psyched to jump on in, which
yeah,
is
it
awesome.
was impressive. So
Good.
it's good.
Well, can I get call for the question then if there's no other ones? Councilman Jay Han?
Yes.
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 Welcome aboard, Chris. So, all right, here we go on item E. Reappoint Kara Kolovich for the second 3-year term on the Planning Commission. I have no problem with Kara. She's done a great job. So can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Hahn to reappoint Kara Kolovich for the second 3-year term on the Planning Commission. Call for the question. If there is none, Councilman Jay Han?
Yes.
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 Okay, moving on to item F. Reappoint Judy Lugerski to the Housing Authority Board for a 5-year term. I think Judy filled in and was appointed to the position when somebody left. I think she's doing a great job, but a wealth of knowledge she has, so. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Take a second.
Second?
Motion by Councilwoman White, second by Councilwoman Cox. To reappoint Judy Lookers to the Housing Authority Board for a 5-year term. I'm going to call for the question. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 Yeah, okay, moving on. It's approve, authorize the mayor to sign an update retainer agreement with Adams Phillips for the city of Lander civil attorney service in the amount of $5,000 per month. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
The motion by Councilman Hahn, second by Councilman White. To authorize the mayor to sign a retainer agreement with Adam Phillips. Adam's been doing a great job for us. Glad he's wanting to re-up with us, so. Any questions?
I just have a comment, and I don't think we've, increased him for a while.
Long time.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's one we just got to keep working on a little bit
That's
at a
right.
time.
That's right.
So I'll call for a question, Jay Hahn.
No, just kidding. Yes.
That was good. That was pretty good.
Mayor has our,
Did you re-say what you were supposed to say?
Yes.
okay. Mayor, has our city attorney reviewed this contract?
No, I'm just putting it out there.
Yes.
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 I'm moving on, pass with an affirmative. Approve. Approve licensing for the Lander Community Foundation storage shed to be placed on the north piece of the rodeo grounds.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would need to recuse myself on this, being that I'm on the Lander Community Foundation Board. I'll step out.
We don't have to step out.
Huh?
You don't have to
Yeah.
step out. You
Yeah.
just recuse
Okay.
yourself, so.
Okay.
All right, give us the reason why. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, got a motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Cox to approve licenses for Lander Community Foundation storage shed. Questions? Since there is none, I'll call for the question. Councilman Jay Hahn.
Yes.
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 Motion carries. Item I, approval license for Lindsay Washkovich and Ben Elzey for 865 North Second Alley encroachment. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved.
Got a motion? Take a second.
Second?
Motion by Councilman Hahn, second by Councilwoman Cox. Do you have any questions? Since there is none, you have a
So,
question? Oh,
Yeah,
so
I
too
do have a
fast.
question. So trying to figure this out, these are contracts I'm not as familiar with. So I believe these are relatively new owners of the property. Is that correct? Because a previous owner, I'm trying to recreate, Regine, the history of this. If you could, are you prepared to give a little bit of the history about this one?
Absolutely. So Lindsay and Benjamin have purchased 865 North Second. You currently have a license with a different company, K&L Investments, for this same property. It did not say heirs and assigns, so we had to redo a license for the new owners.
And if I can add to that, we have to revoke the previous license, which was not included in your packet. It's a very similar document and I can certainly get it to you, but we will have to revoke the previous license to be able to put the new license in. Otherwise, the county will get upset with us because their record gets messed up.
Okay, so I think this all started because their building is encroached on the property line or the,
That's correct.
and so this would allow them to continue maintaining that building in that position.
That's correct. But you do have two options tonight as you vote for this because the revocation wasn't included. You'll need to vote on that as well so that we can get it recorded. So you can either amend to approve the revocation even though you haven't seen it, or you can table it till our next meeting on the 26th to be able to address it then so you can see the revocation paperwork as well.
Move that we table it.
I second that.
Got a motion to table it, second by Councilman White.
And before you vote on it, you'll need to make sure you table it till the next meeting so that it's clear.
Table till the next meeting.
There you go.
I'll
All right.
second the table to the next
All right, got a
meeting.
motion and a second. Call for the question. Councilman Jehan.
Yes.
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 Motion passes. Approves or authorizes mayor to sign a Lander Municipal Airport hangar space land lease agreement between the city of Lander, Steve Millsap for hangar space 505. A motion in a second.
So moved.
Get a second.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Cox, second by Councilman White to approve the hangar space land lease agreement. Questions, concerns? None? Call for the question, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 Motion passes, so. Let me flip my page. I have nothing else on my pages, so. I get a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
In a second,
Second.
motion in a second. Call for the question, Councilman Jehan.
Yes.
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 Meeting is adjourned. You guys.